And if you're wondering, it's Thursday. It's 5. We're live. This is Frankly Speaking. I'm Joe Spina, and there's Paul Crowley.
Hey, good to be
Isn't
back,
that a combination,
Joe?
huh?
Sorry I missed the last couple of weeks. I really missed being on the show with you and talking to the viewers back home.
Well, I have to finish off, though. Where truth is our mission, reality our realm, set as we see it, and frankly as well. Paul, last week, sitting where you're sitting, was Council President Darren Sear.
Yep.
And he said something very profound. Of course, I paid no attention to it whatsoever. And, folks, I think you
How
should pay
profound could it be if you paid no attention to it?
I paid no attention to it because I have a tendency of not paying attention to good advice.
Okay.
And he actually offered some very sound advice, but I refused to accept it. And what he said to these folks out there, Paul, is he said, you know, go get yourself a flu shot because those in my family that didn't have been hospitalized and not doing too well. I got it. He was ill a couple of weeks ago. He said he got the flu, but since he got the shot, he was able to sustain it.
Same thing with me. I got the flu shot, first time ever. I got the flu shot, and my symptoms were very minor.
Well, la, Paul. I didn't, and mine were not minor. As a matter of fact, I'm still suffering from last Thursday.
And let me tell you something, the flu shot is free.
Well, thank you very much. Folks, between him and Darren Sear, you're better off listening to either one of them than you are to me.
On these kind of matters.
And what was that?
On these kind of matters, because you, Dr. Spina, in charge of your own health care, and
Yeah, I am, as a matter of fact, but I would advise people, if they're interested, to either use NutraSweet or Jenny Craig rather than the method I used to lose weight.
use the method I used.
Which is what, to get sick?
No, you just have it. I didn't get sick.
Well, the only reason why I lost weight is because I got sick.
You gotta. If you're going to try to lose weight, you want to get the app, and the ability to keep track of your calories and how many calories you're burning, and you become more aware of the things that you need to stay away from and so forth. It
Enjoy yourself, Paul.
works remarkably well.
Enjoy yourself. I'd rather live than count calories. Folks, things have happened.
I'm living pretty good, though. I don't. This isn't about. I mean, I did it for 3 months, and now I don't count them anymore because now I know what's in everything I'm eating, and I stay away from the troublesome stuff.
You're trained as a bean counter. Okay?
Okay.
Meanwhile, history, the city of Lynn.
Yeah.
Not only is it Black History Month, and for those of you, Frederick Douglass, 200 years old,
Yep.
his birthday, and Steve Archer became the first African-American department head, and
Fire chief.
obviously, he's chief of the fire department, right?
Yep.
In the history of the city of Lynn.
Yep.
And the tradition of Buzzy Barton, which I give him credit for. He gave Buzzy, he gave my boy Kenny Turner a bouquet, and Bradley, and who else was there that I remember? And if I forgot somebody, please for your picture. I mean, there's a really good tradition of young black men who were like trailblazers to open up things healthy in the fire department of the city of Lynn, and also in the police department now.
Yep. And Steve Archer, he's a high caliber guy and a very good fireman.
He gets high grades, says Steve Archer.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
I do.
I know his brother.
He went to school with my brother.
He's a tech boy.
Yep.
Yeah, because apparently...
I actually inducted him into the Hall of Fame. I was the MC when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Was he an athlete?
No, he got inducted in for being...
an intellectual, like you?
Primarily for his work with the fire department.
Really?
Yep.
Well, congratulations, Steve, and best of luck to you. And for all our African-American viewers, friends, and colleagues, enjoy your Black History Month. There's a lot of history there.
Yep.
Frederick Douglass actually lived in Lynn for a little while.
Yeah.
He was an abolitionist. And so you should take a look at it. Now, last night, we had the Little Bull. You don't know who the Little Bull was, right?
I know of him from reading the story in the paper, yeah.
From San Juan,
Yep.
Puerto Rico, and very popular in the Dominican community. So we welcome the Little Bull.
Is he Dominican or Puerto Rican?
Why do you have to ask me a trick question?
Because you said he's from Puerto Rico, and then you mentioned Dominican Republic.
I've been sick, Paul.
So
My synapses are not snapping well.
I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm just
Yes, you
trying to
are.
find. I want to know whether he's Dominican or Puerto Rican.
Does it matter?
No, not really.
Speak Spanish, you know.
Yes.
Either way.
Yeah. But you know that if you're from the Dominican Republic, if you come here from the Dominican Republic, you are a guest in our country. If you come here from Puerto Rico, you are a citizen.
That I did know, Paul. Nice try.
A little different.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that does create some difference, right?
Okay. But the little bull, was here last night. Is he going to be here anymore, do you know?
I don't know.
Anyways, if you missed the little bull,
What's his real name?
huh?
What's his real name? The little bull. That was the
Ramon something or other, I think.
And he's a very well received entertainer, right? And
One of the best,
And
yeah.
he did the auditorium. Is that what happened? Yep.
So you learn a lot, you know, on this show.
I
Plus-
do every week.
Plus, two gorgeous little things. I wish I was younger. And I never knew about Polish dumplings, which I believe are called bajorka, whatever. Folks, you know you're going to call me and tell me. I never hear 781, by the way. 781-780-90.
9460.
I told you I've been sick, 9460. See, he's not sick, so you can get away with it. But these two sisters, called the White Sisters, who got this recipe from their grandfather from Western Mass, got a grant from Jim Cadell for Lydia Pinkham Building, in which they're going to make dumplings. I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
So some good things are
I'm
happening.
going to have to go down and buy some.
You like dumplings too, huh?
I want to try them.
I am.
Oh.
Definitely will.
I like Polish food.
Do you realize that some people have Trump derangement? I mean, it is forget about the flu. This Trump derangement consumes the soul, the mind, and more importantly, your moral fiber.
Right.
And our rep, otherwise known as Seth Moulton, gets all bummed out of shape. He says Trump should get off his ass, that's him talking about our president, my president, after the Florida shooting. Now, it also says up there in red, if you see it, Paul,
Yeah.
on gun control. You know, I was fascinated by that because nowhere did Seth Moulton say that. But the editors, or whoever wrote the story, decided to stick it in. You know why? Because they got a gun agenda.
Right.
Follow me? A tragedy that, I don't know if
They
gun...
politicize it immediately.
Right. So here's actually what was said. The president, Trump said, "My prayers and condolences to the families of the victims of the terrible Florida shooting. No child, teacher, or anyone else should ever feel unsafe in an American school." To the point,
Right.
perfect. So what does Moulton do? Can't help himself. He's got to jump in, you know. He's got to grab some piece of the stage. I agree with every word. I said, what? I agree with every word said here. I invite him, the president, to get off his ass and join me in trying to do something about it. Well, Seth, what have you been doing about it?
Right. You know, when I think about this, I don't know how long Moulton's been around, 5, 6 years or something like that. Trump's only been around for a year. What has Seth Moulton done about that other than take advantage of every tragedy and try to politicize it to his advantage? Because he believes that you just continue to erode gun rights so that you can ultimately confiscate them all. That's really what they want to do, right?
I want to ask the folks out there, what can be done? I hear stuff like we need a conversation. Tell me what good conversations do, Paul.
Well, I'm going to say this, and I think it's an important point to bring up, is when you write the number 320 million, which is the number of people in this country, right? It's, 320 and then 000, comma 000. There's a lot of people in this country, right? And as somebody who has a transportation organization, and we cart around 2,500 people a day, it's important to understand that at the end of the day there will be statistics about things that happen, whether it's an accident or an incident or a car accident, somebody gets hurt. These things will happen, and the bigger the number, even if the percentage is minute, the bigger the number, the more likely they are to happen, right? It's just the rule of statistics and And by the way, I have this same argument with the people who talk about the illegal immigrants who cause harm to people, murder, rape, and things like that. We could do something to stop it very simply by getting rid of anybody who's a troublemaker who's not a citizen. But you can't stop it, just like you can't stop gun violence. You just can't. I mean, you can
minimize, Paul.
You can minimize,
and you
right.
can. And you're right. Here's what trouble.
And real valid ways of minimizing it would be allowing schools and parents to take matters into their own hands to some extent, instead of relying on.
How about this, Paul? How about a society that devalues life when abortion is casual? How about a society that has Pulp Fiction and Harvey Weinstein and Kill Bill and showing all that gratuitous stuff? How about a society that devalues the importance of the nuclear family and says that all other equivalencies are just as good, and we know they're not?
Right.
So we reap the benefits of the seeds that we sow.
Right.
And I'm saying that this has been long coming, and it's a breakdown on whatever you want to call it, folks, whether you want to call it the Judeo-Christian ethic, whatever you want to call it. Somehow or another, we have lost our compass as a people, as a society. Our sensitivity and our tolerance for that which should not be tolerated. And this is not a knock on anybody, but when we start debating whether Joseph S. Spina, Esquire, or Paul Crowley, Esquire, decide that Paul Crowley wants to be Paulina Crowley at this stage in life, that's your business. But you should not look for me to accept that as a normal, in my view, right?
Right.
That's a private thing for you. We're normalizing stuff that offends a lot of people and runs against their grain. And we have to start thinking about that.
Right.
So we're afraid to offend anybody. And it's not a question of being offensive. It's a question of civility, Paul. Simple civility. Now, the reason why you and I walk outside a female on a sidewalk has a historical precedent. It's called chivalry.
Right.
And it was, folks, now listen to this, people used to have buckets, and their residue would be in the buckets. And not knowing anything about sanitation in those days, they went to the window, and they threw the bucket, stuff in the buckets out the window.
Right.
Now, who was going to get nailed? The outside, not the inside. So the man walked with a probability factor of getting hit with the swill was the greater.
Right.
And he did that out of deference to the fairer sex.
Right.
That's a nice couplet. Why does this have to be destroyed, Paul? I mean, why is it that if my granddaughters are walking across the puddle, I'd be more apt to lay a jacket down for them than my grandson?
Right.
Is that something wrong with that?
No, there really isn't. But
what made it such?
Essentially, the homogenization of society is tried to.
But you can't
mask all the
homogenize
differences.
genitalia, Paul. Yeah, we're trying to,
Yeah.
but you really can't, can you? Now, when we became AI rather, that's a different story. Robots really don't have any gender. But we do.
Right.
And as long as we do, and it was intended that way, that's the way we should operate, no?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Taxing times, Paul. Very taxing times. Now,
With a little asterisk over taxing because it's not actually being called a tax, but okay.
well, it depends what you're talking about.
Right.
So right off the get-go, and I tried to get Sarah on this last week. He admitted to it. And folks, you know I was talking about this. First of all, we have an $8.1 million deficit, and that's subject to interpretation. Who means that, and how, is it true from the false? And in lieu of that $8.1 million deficit that's been flexible, all types of shenanigans are taking place. Is that correct?
Shenanigans isn't the word that comes to mind, but
It's a nice one.
Yeah.
We have a caller, though.
Okay.
Caller, let's get it up there. Well, that's an interesting question. Do you, Paul, believe that the shooter in Florida is a terrorist?
No.
By loose definition, anybody who commits murder is a terrorist.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in loose definition, yeah. I mean,
But is he part of ISIS? No.
right. Tricky question for sure, but I guess what I would say is that he's a person who has a lot of hate in his heart and.
How about he's just plain evil, Paul?
Yeah.
Is there have any of you folks ever thought about this? There are people in the world who are evil. Evil exists.
Yeah.
And if it exists, deal with it. You're not going to mediate it. You're not going to peer mediate it at all.
Right.
You have to strike it down, Paul.
Right. Well, the interesting thing was, you know, and this is always happens, and it kind of drives me a little bit crazy, but immediately after something tragic like this, everybody's running around to find out who we can blame for it, you know?
Yeah, now they're blaming the FBI for not taking,
Right.
you know. And the whole issue is this: no one's to blame but the individual to pull the trigger.
Right.
And he was unadulterated evil. You can spin your wheels all you want. That's it. You want to stop evil? You got to fight it head on. You got to spray the holy water on it. We're not doing that, Paul.
No.
We're making excuses. You know?
Yeah. No, I tend to agree with that. Yeah.
So,
Always trying to, and you know, like you were talking about Seth Moulton, for political gain, he is taking advantage of a tragedy, you know.
he doesn't have a solution, Paul.
He doesn't.
Keep his mouth shut if he doesn't have something positive to say. And these politicians today are saying stuff for the sake of saying it. They like the sound of their voice.
Right.
They do nothing positive. You know, we have some very serious problems in this country. Here's what no one's facing, and it's tied, folks, it's tied into taxing times. I'm down, laying on my couch with my dog. My dog loves me, by the way. Get a dog, better than penicillin. And I'm watching all of these heads of the intel community.
Right.
And the one thing that they talked about that was critical for the life of our country, the most significant thing to a national defense and survival, is the national debt. You try to tell these people that, they don't understand that. They're saying is, if you don't have the money, if you bankrupt the country, how are you going to get the guns to fight wars? You're not going to be able to do anything. You've got no money to do it with, right?
Right.
All right. This has happened over and over and over again in history, Paul. It's not a new phenomenon. So here we are in the city of Lynn on the cusp of financial bankruptcy, and we could argue that we might be better off in receivership than we would be to bond the $16 million that's being proposed.
Right. Well, I get a little nervous about that $16 million proposed because we haven't got the money yet.
No.
But I'll bet you that the unions are all lining up to get their cut.
Well, they're going to go to 20. They are, because there's a reserve fund.
Right.
Because they're looking for 16, and the shortfall, if you add this year and next year proposed, is about 11.
And let me just equate this to a problem back in 2007 and 2008. We had this, you know, the debt crisis when everybody foreclosed on the mortgages, the house values went down, and all that kind of stuff. Think about what was happening. People were using their houses as an ATM, right? So you basically use the collateral of your home to borrow money, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you borrow money using the collateral and you go out and you spend it on dinner, vacation, a new car, balancing your budget from month to month, what are you doing? You're basically extending the payback period for 30 years to do it, right? And you are essentially you're using long-term debt to pay for current expenses.
Which is exactly what's going to be happening in the city of Lynn if we're not careful. We got to take a break, Paul. We get back, get right to
So
it.
I want to say, operating expenses are not supposed to be paid for with debt at the city level. I think it's the law.
It is the law. We'll get back to that. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll let Paul explain the mechanics. Stay tuned.
Sometimes a smile can say more than words could ever express. But what if you couldn't smile? Unfortunately, that's the sad reality for so many children today. But it doesn't have to be this way. Since 1999, Smile Train has been helping children say more than words ever could with their beautiful new smile. To learn more, call or go online now.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
And we're back, and we're going to try to balance budget. We have a couple of calls, but we're going to get to the calls first and then continue therefore.
Okay.
Why are we borrowing by going out to bond instead of cutting? That's an interesting question.
Well, that kind of ties in with what I was just saying, and that is, first of all, two things. There's two laws that are, part of our charter says that the city of Lynn cannot borrow more than $4 million without getting voter approval. That was the way it was when I was on the city council. I don't think that law has changed. Seems to be they're trying to figure their way around that.
That you're talking about if you're trying to get capital improvements, you can only bond out $4 million.
You can get $4 million without asking the voters for approval.
And that's not sufficient.
Because they had to get $10 million to fix classical, and we had to get voters to support that.
All right. Let's make another point.
And then the other point is that when you borrow money,
Yep.
it's for capital improvements. It's not for operating. They're going to use that money to put in their reserve fund, to pay overtime, to sweeten the deals with the unions.
But they need the council's approval for ask for a home rule petition in order to do that.
They also need the legislature.
The state to approve it.
Right.
Well, that process they're going to be going through, there's going to be a public hearing on the 27th, I believe, or a meeting on it, right?
Yep.
Excuse me. Okay. Plus, we are mandated to balance our budget. Is that correct?
Right. And I would argue, in addition to everything that I've said so far, this is not balancing the budget. This is saying we can't balance the budget, so we need this money.
That's right. Second call. What's the other call that was up there? And it's not yet. We'll have it up there as soon as we have it. We'll get to it.
Okay.
Here's what gets me, Paul. I'm not convinced that we don't have a structural problem that cannot be fixed, even if you bond it over for a couple of years.
Well, that's another very significant component. I remember in 2009 when we had this collapse and Obama took over, and they came up. Remember they had the $1 trillion stimulus plan, the $1.1 trillion stimulus plan. I remember when he announced that, I said, geez, this would be great if they could just give the cities and towns and the states some money so that they can get to that next level, get back to zero, and then they could go back to business as usual. But that never turned out, and that's because government gets involved more than anything.
Well,
and the fact is, it was structural. The problem was structural. When the debt market collapsed, everything around it collapsed, and that's just the way it is.
The mayor-elect, well, not no longer the mayor-elect, the mayor, Mayor McGee, got before the Lynn Chamber of Commerce, was it?
Yes.
And he said, in effect, he said that he needed this bonding money in order to straighten his ship out, but also, in a second breath, without missing a beat, talked about how he wanted to be an advocate to gather everybody, community organizers, in order to get around to building 2 quality middle schools. And I'm saying to myself, how can you turn around and talk about having budgetary problems and at the same time be in the market to want to build 2 middle schools at about $150 million a clip? That's number one. Then he's touting the fact, oh, by the way, we're adding 9 new policemen because we got this federal grant for $1.1 million, to which I'm saying that federal grant expires next year.
Right.
But the positions now filled don't expire.
Right.
Who picks up the tab for those
Right.
other?
So let's just go through that. So the 1.1 million expires, and we still have the 9 cops, right?
Right.
How do we continue to pay for them? The $16 million is going to, in my view, at least in part, is going to go to the unions by virtue of wage increases and so forth. And then that money will be gone. And then we're still back to the fact that we're only getting a base level of revenue annually, unless they can grow the revenue that comes into the city faster than the rate of inflation. We're never going to be able to get caught up. That structural problem will never go away. So it's a Band-Aid.
Oh, wait a second, Paul. A Band-Aid? I guess it's a Band-Aid.
Band-Aid for a severed hand.
For hemorrhage. How about this one? Now, we mentioned the trash fee a while back. They want to extend that to everybody. Originally it wasn't, but now everybody.
So I would.
Go ahead.
So they did that, and basically it was 2 and 3 families, and it was supposed to be only for
that's
for
gone.
landlords. But it was landlords that didn't live in the house, right?
Right.
So it was non-owner occupied. Good intention. It was supposed to raise what, $3 million? Or so? I don't know.
$2 million.
$2 million. So now, the I don't know, the collector or somebody's complaining that they can't figure out how to efficiently bill for this. And I would say, why don't we do something, because what they want to do is they want to just, every resident gets whacked for this. This is a way, by the way, in addition to tax increases, to get around the Proposition 2.5 argument, in my view. They don't call it a tax, therefore it isn't, even though effectively it's going to affect every residential household. Here, at a time when they raised the residential tax factor, the lowest residential tax factor was applied to the tax formulation this year. But now they're going to whack just the residents for this trash fee. So they're, in effect, talking out of both sides of their mouth on this. This is...
Of course, Paul. And here... And once you establish a tax, it now has a tendency to grow.
Right, and here's what it was. So they did this thing. It was only going to be for a certain segment, right? It was going to be the outside the city.
That didn't last long, Paul.
Right. So that was what it was. And then they said, okay, we need to fix this problem, but we're not really looking for more money. We just need to fix the problem. But because it's going to generate more money, we'll take it.
Did
right?
anybody buy into that?
I don't buy it. You know what they
Pedro,
could do?
if we have that graphic from last week, we could show. Paul wasn't here. I did that exact graphic, not that one there, with the quote. There it is. Read it, Paul.
The goal was not necessarily to raise more money. That's a quote from the paper, right?
Right. Right.
To make the implementation of the new fee easier. Now, I would say if the new fee was going to generate $1 million,
yeah,
and the new implementation is going to generate $3 million. What they need to do is reduce the rate for the entire city by a third, so that they still generate $1 million.
of course,
but they won't do that.
No, but here's the best part of it, and here's the one that really gets me. The reason why they say they're doing it is because the trash fee is $6 million, and they're going to take this money to reduce the trash fee. Well, that's nonsensical. Because the trash fee is going to go up, or the cost of collecting trash is going to go up, which was going to necessitate what? An increase in a tax fee that we didn't have once before.
Right. So the bottom line is that they need to figure out a way to grow, to have a legitimately balanced budget and grow revenue and expenses at the same pace.
Yes, Paul, but
but what they're doing, the $16 million loan, $200 million for school, they are expanding the...
I agree with you. Put everything aside.
Okay.
And let's go right to the core. Let's go to the essence where the problem lies. Because you can't do anything in this city without doing something about the cost of education. End of story. That's the driver.
Right. Yeah, I haven't...
And over the last 8 years, because of the influx of unaccompanied minors into the Lynn school system at 300 plus per year, at $5 million plus per year, it has escalated the cost of education in the city of Lynn to over $40 to $50 million.
Right.
That is where the structural deficit lies.
Right.
Unless
and I haven't heard anybody talking about dealing with that.
Unless you stop the flow. So building 2 junior high schools doesn't stop the flow.
Right.
It invites the flow. Unless you stop it, unless you get away from sanctuary city mindsets, unless you get away from we're a welcoming community, we have a problem.
But by the way, can I say that I think that Lynn is a sanctuary city in a very different context, and we are a welcoming city and we should be a welcoming city in a very different context. Not in the context that I don't care what your situation is, we'll take you, we'll figure it out. We don't have the money, so for us to say that,
But Paul,
really
that
isn't
is the sense
fair.
in which I mean it, and that's in the sense which those folks out there mean it. They don't mean it in the nuanced sense.
Right.
Now, let's fool around. This nuanced stuff is getting us in a whole bunch of trouble.
Right.
The net bottom line is that you cannot have 17,000 students in a city that has a population of 90,000 people, 90,000 plus, and expect to survive.
Right.
It's an impossibility. So face that problem. Address that. The mayor in the city of Lynn is the president of the Lynn School Committee on top of it.
Right.
They can turn around and make adjustments. They're looking for a new superintendent. How about telling that superintendent, I want you to do an A to Z, top to bottom analysis, and I expect to have a 10% reduction all over the place.
Right.
Now, a 10% reduction is $20 million or better.
Well,
$20 million.
Just like at the federal and the state level, when as soon as you're talking about trying to fix problems about the way we're spending money, everybody who's benefiting from that spending comes screaming out of the woodwork. It's a follow the money kind of thing.
So you stumble onto the truth, Paul.
I stumbled. Well, it's like the VA. The VA has been broken for how many years?
But nobody wanted to fix it.
And now with Donald Trump, we know why they can't fix it, and that is because there's too many people protecting it, because there's a lot of people making money off of it, and by the way, congressmen are sending their kids, their friends' kids, their uncle, their nephew, to go to work there.
Yeah, Paul, I'm going to put all that aside for the time being. I'm interested in the city of Lynn.
Yep.
And as
it's happening like in the city of Lynn on a small scale.
Exactly.
I would say that you could take 50. You could take everybody that's employed in the city of Lynn, and you could connect them to 50 people.
Paul, here is what we've got to face. We're on the cusp, on the brink of oblivion, financial oblivion.
Right.
This bond is a stopgap measure at best that doesn't really last that long and doesn't do that much.
No.
Come April 1st, we don't have to worry about complying with the law because we would artificially have done it. You get what I mean? But we have solved nothing, except that those folks out there and me are going to pay substantially higher real estate tax without an increase, because they're going to tell me that my house is worth more. Okay?
Right.
So I can expect, I just sailed for 13, I can expect to sell for 14 or 15 shortly.
Right.
Okay? And on top of that, they're going to give me the good grace of saying, oh, by the way, your trash fee is going up. And then if Peter Capano has his way, he'll be separating sewers and pipes all over the city at $150 million a clip. Now, that's a tax by excuse me.
Right.
That's a tax by any other definition, too.
Very regressive, too.
Very regressive.
Right.
Okay? And does it solve a problem?
Right.
If it solved the problem, okay. But it's iffy.
Yeah, it just gets it gets us to the next level.
You know, why would you spend $150 million on something that's iffy? You know, oh, if, but, oh, if.
I remember,
by the way, they're predicating this budget on ifs.
A lot of ifs. And, you know, once they get the money, it doesn't matter. Right?
Why are you smiling, Paul?
Remember the deal on the Marshall Middle School?
Yeah, what about it?
Oh, it's only going to cost the city 20% of $60 million. That's all it's going to cost.
They only suck on me once. They got me on that once.
Right. And then once we said okay, they went and did it, and then we find out that we ended up spending $60 million of our money on the project, right, or something like that.
And that person now is a Ward 2 councilor.
But but you can never, you can't go back if they lie. And I'm not even saying that they lied.
What about if they didn't lie? What about if they were misrepresented?
And I think that's probably more likely the case. They didn't know the facts necessarily completely.
Right. And I think that's the case much too often.
Right.
That they're duped by intermediaries.
Well, I'll tell you, having
Excuse me, folks.
You always call me a bean counter, but having an accounting background, when I was on the city council, I always asked questions about, how you're going to pay for it, and and I would figure out the math of it.
No, but
and the math never works.
Paul, it can't work because it's not intended to work.
Right.
We have to take a break, folks. Our number here is 781. What is it, Paul?
780-9460.
Oh, it's, all of a sudden it's zeros, huh?
Yeah, that's for my friend John back home.
Yeah, but I'm going to say it's 781-780-9460.
Okay.
How do you like that, John? Yeah. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
John and Joe go way back, huh?
Yeah. Imagine when I get healthy again, what's going to happen? When we get back, folks, we're going to take a little trip into the weeds. So, stay tuned.
Doesn't see race. Love is love.
I believe in nature.
I believe in the spirit.
I believe in trust. Beauty.
I believe in my mom. Strawberry ice cream.
Fortune cookies.
Chocolate.
I believe in
the tooth fairy.
Being honest with yourself.
I believe in Santa Claus. Aliens, of course.
I believe what I want to believe.
I believe in myself.
I believe in myself. I believe in peace.
And welcome back. We have a call. We're going to get right to that caller. And the caller is bing, bing, bing. Keep me. Well, I'll move on to other things. Folks, in case you didn't know this, let me do a stream of consciousness. That state that has the second largest coastline of any state, you're going to love this one, is Michigan. I never realized that. Alaska has the largest coastline. Michigan is number 2. Why should a single person pay the same amount as a family for trash pickup when a single person has less trash?
What a profound statement. That's the truth. And the premise behind the 2 and 3 families is they were generating more trash, and they weren't really doing a good job of keeping it contained because the owners didn't live in the building, so they were leaving it, and it would get messy and all that kind of stuff. So, very good point.
How do you monitor that, Paul? That's the problem.
How do you monitor what?
How do you determine that a person has only one single family?
So I've got an answer for that.
Yeah, good.
I was thinking about this. I was talking to somebody about this earlier. How about if you only charge the trash fee to those with 2 and 3 family?
And
then you can mechanically you can do it because there's a classification on everybody's tax bill. They could run a report. List all the 2 families, list all the 3 families. The 2 families get charged, let's say, $50 per. You charge $50 per unit per month, or whatever the number is, right? So it'd be $100 a month for the 2 family, be $150 for the 3 family. All done. And if you want to be able to give a break to those who live in the units, if they can prove that they live in the units, they get a rebate or an abatement.
Well, why would a person living in an apartment building have to pay a trash fee?
I'm not talking about the tenants. I'm talking about the landowner. The owner of the property. So they get
why? First of all, the issue is why is a single family have to pay a trash fee to start with?
That's what I'm saying. This is a way so they wouldn't have to.
Well, it wasn't intended to start with.
Right, but now they're doing it because they're getting greedy. Don't you think?
It's not a question of greed. It's a question of
It's greed. Look, what it really boils down to is this is one of those quick fixes. They do it right in the beginning of an election cycle. So by the time the next election comes around, people have forgotten all about it and so forth. You make the bad choice, the hard choices, or the painful choices early.
what if these folks here decide on the 27th of February that they do not want their city councilors to approve a home rule petition to go out and borrow the $14 million?
They'll still do it.
Huh?
They'll still do it.
You mean the council will bypass and override the will of the people?
They'll hear the pros and the cons, and they'll vote in favor.
Not what I'm saying. It was very aggressive what the general public did vis-a-vis the Pickering schools.
It's a done deal, Joe.
Pardon?
It's a done deal. They've already decided.
Right.
There's only, I would say there's only one person on the council that's opposed to this. Maybe two.
So that same scenario, that same type of thing couldn't happen on this particular issue, on the public saying vociferously that we don't want a home rule petition in order to override, to borrow money, to get a bond to override, or not, it's not an override, in order to be able to apply this money to operating expenses?
I'm not a lawyer, and it's been so long since
My point simply being, Paul, what if the people of the city of Lynn said, we prefer receivership?
They still won't get it, because
That's being cynical.
there's 12 people. There's 12 people in the city of Lynn that don't want receivership, not counting the union. It's the mayor and the 11 councilors.
Caller, how are you?
And they make the decisions.
Is it possible to have all politicians on the show so they can answer questions directly, Paulie E? Yeah, it's possible. I'm not so sure that they'd be willing to do it.
Yeah, I'm not either. We have varying degrees of participation. You have the people that refuse to come on because they're afraid of the questions we might ask them, and so forth. Got a guy like Darren who's always willing to come on and face the tough questions.
I give Council President Sear a world of credit, who is our co-host on many of our shows, and he has the guts to face the folks and the questions. He doesn't back down, and I respect that.
Right. And look, by the way, I actually think that as far as it goes, that this is, the mayor has chosen to go down this path. I happen to disagree with it, but he's being proactive. He's trying to figure out a solution. I wish he was a little bit more interested in trying to make better use of resources and deal with the structural issues that you're talking about instead of the Band-Aid approach.
Mine is not directed at the mayor. My concern is directed at the political climate.
Right, and mine isn't either.
So it's got nothing to do with the mayor or the city council per se. It's got to do with folks rethinking and having the courage to rein in the union, because the teachers' union is a big player in our budget. Excuse me. And those types of things.
Yep.
So I want to have a little fun, folks. See if we can get into the grass here. I think that we have a picture of somebody with binoculars. I don't know what he's doing, but you see that? Does it look familiar to you, Paul? Huh?
That's
Folks,
pretty clever. Who did that? Who's the artist that did that?
I cannot.
So
that's actually done. That's actually a takeoff of the portrait that's going to go into National Archives.
That's a piece. That's really the portrait of Obama that will go in the National Archives with more of those that ivy
leaves,
covering him up, and the binoculars. And it's kind of funny because he hasn't been making a lot of statements, and he hasn't been,
If I were him, I'd be hiding.
But he's hiding in the weeds, and he's keeping an eye on things, and he's keeping an eye on that guy at 1600 Pence that lives in his old house.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's exactly.
Well, let's go to the Oval Office and let's see. Can we get to the Oval Office?
Look at that.
Wait a minute. Is he looking in? Huh? Aha.
Hey, Donald, and he's got his eye on you, Donald and Mike. He's watching.
Here's the interesting thing. It seems to me that, unless I'm incorrect, all the polls are showing a rise, a significant rise.
Actually, what's interesting is that at this point in Donald Trump's tenure as president, he has a higher approval rating than Barack Obama had at the same time.
That's what I say, yeah.
And Barack Obama was just about ready to do that that whole thing with you know, the Affordable Care Act, which made things much worse, right?
Yeah.
His approval rating gets shot from that.
What's interesting is that I don't know what's going to happen on the immigration thing, but
They voted it down today.
see, that's the resolution to the immigration problem, a building of the wall, the shutting off of immigration would benefit the city of Lynn so significantly and have more impact on our budget than any single thing that the city of Lynn could do. And we have Seth Moulton taking cheap shots at a president instead of getting behind him, pushing like crazy to build a wall to shut off that immigration that would help out the opioid crisis that we have, plus the influx.
See, a guy like Seth Moulton, who's high ambitions, he's trying to follow the path of least resistance, and he makes a very significant mistake here, because there may have been a time, you know, like during the Obama administration when, you know, just hanging on to the coattails of the Democratic Party was the right way to go because things were moving along good. And if Hillary Clinton had won, that would have been great. The fact is, that party is over. That boat has sailed, and anybody who believes that following along with Democrat dogma now is foolhardy. Don't you think?
I tend to agree with you, Paul. I'm not so sure the Republican Party is the answer. I think that there are folks out there are moving toward what I would consider it's nationalistic in sentiment. They're sick and tired, in my view, of the insanity. You know, it's an assault on their sensitivities. I mean, if you're out there working hard, and you know, folks in the city of Lynn work hard, Paul.
Yep, they do.
Blue collar town. And they're trying to do the right thing, send their kids to decent school, give them opportunities to have a better life. And they're going to go up against all this crazy stuff. I mean, those folks out in California, Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and Eric Stallwell, all buddies of Seth Moulton,
right?
They're certifiably out of their minds.
Yeah. You know, so Nancy Pelosi stood on the floor of Congress and spoke for 8 hours about nothing really, but it was to make a statement, right? And she can't take 2 minutes to defend the family of a United States person killed by an illegal alien in her own district.
That's right.
She can't do it.
So what's that tell you?
She's certifiably crazy. She's a lunatic. She's
Paul, when a whole class of representatives, otherwise known as the Congressional Black Caucus, and this is not an indictment on Black America, because they're waking up too.
Right.
You know, the Congressional Black Caucus does not represent Black America.
They do not. You're absolutely right. You know, all you got to do is look at the financial statements of the members of the Black Caucus, and you will find that they have managed to make quite a nice life for themselves, just going along to get along.
So the point is that there's a shift taking place across the board. It's like Alice in Wonderland world, with what is up is now down, et cetera, et cetera. I had a lot of respect throughout my life for what was known as the Democratic Party.
Me too.
And you take a look at the tradition of folks in this city, you know, the old Charlie Hoffmans, you know, from Ward 4. There were a host of them. I mean, whether I agreed or disagreed with certain philosophies of certain folks. I mean, Charlie McGee Sr. Was a...
He was grateful.
He was legendary.
Yep.
Walter Boverini, He was further right than I ever thought of being. You get what I mean, as far on the political spectrum, right?
Yep.
So things have changed. I find it sad, and this is, again, not an indictment on an individual. It's on a system. That somebody gets congratulated, gets the endorsement of the teachers union for running against nothing. How can you endorse somebody that ran against nobody or nothing? What's that person stand for? It's never been tested.
Right.
So, I mean, shame on the teachers union for endorsing someone who ran against
Who ran unopposed.
nothing.
Right.
Right. I mean, you have to earn an endorsement, don't you? Where do you differ?
Well,
Where do the lines go? By the way,
how does anybody earn an endorsement? It's for what you've done up to that point for the people that are endorsing you, right? So he's been a strong supporter of the teachers.
at
union.
what point do they have the courage to tell an advocacy group, whatever it may be, whether it's a teachers union or whatever, that, hey, you know, you're being self-centered and
It
selfish
isn't just
here.
about you. It's about the kids you're teaching. It's about the It's about the people in the community.
When have you heard someone say that?
Never. Or when you do it, when I said it, I
But
got
now
kicked to the
starting
curb.
to say it, right?
Yeah, I got kicked to the curb for saying those things.
They don't. But that conversation is not one that anybody wants to hear.
Right.
So the healthy thing I guess what I'm trying to get at is it would be much better off if folks put aside, you know, their affiliations and started thinking about the average person out there in the city of Lynn and their best interest and how they put their shoes on in the morning.
Right.
And try to walk in their shoes, right? That's same at the national level. All this silly foolishness that they talk about regarding, you know, immigration reform and the rest of it, it's unbelievable.
Right.
Caller, let's get that caller up. Read it, Paul, my voice is gone.
Why not have each city department cut their budget by 5%?
Yeah, that's a stopgap measure.
It sounds good, but it really doesn't work, and I'll tell you why.
But psychologically, it's a good thing.
Right. So, for example, the personnel department, I don't know how many people they got there. I remember when I was on the city council, it might have been 2 or 3 people. But a big part of their budget is paying workers' comp claims. So if you cut 5% of the budget, you're forced to eliminate positions because you can't really cut workers' comp. Unless, of course, you can figure out a way to reduce the workers' comp claims. But so you can't actually cut that department by 5%, as an example.
But the point is that there's always a way to do something reasonable if you want to think reasonably.
Right.
So a lot of people, like, one of the things they did not like, and I love them dearly, you know that, I have a lot of respect, is when I have someone who's an elected official, we'll talk about we were mandated. When I talk about that combined sewer, water, separation situation, well, we're mandated by the federal government. Well, why don't you ask the federal government to withdraw the mandate or the state to withdraw it? You know, it's no longer
Fight
feasible.
back, right.
Yeah, it's no longer feasible. So that's what I don't hear.
Right.
You know, don't hide behind, I'm going to spend $150 million because I've been told to, as opposed to...
Hear that all the time. You know, it's like that maintenance of effort thing. We're told that we have to pay the state back $8 million. By the way, what's going on now is the state's going to actually lend the city the money, is what I understand. They're going to lend the city the money so that they can pay back that money that they owe. So why couldn't the state have done that 2 years ago? Just lend us the money, we'll pay you back in installments over a period of time. Instead, it has to wait until a new mayor gets elected. I really don't get that.
Let me give you a little vignette and we're going to get to Facebook comments. My car was making a little noise. I had no idea what it was, so I brought it to a place. Nationally advertised. They go, yeah, wheel bearings. Never heard of it. He said, they said, $350, you know, add it together, $700. I didn't particularly like that idea, Paul. I went down to see my trusty guy, my boy Georgie.
Yep.
Judge, Auto, Marine. I said, Judge, he goes, wheel bearings? It's kind of young to have wheel bearings. I said, well, what can I tell you? I said, yeah, okay. So I dropped the car off. I go substitute a tech, get a ride down, hand to school. He hands me the keys to the car. I said, how much, Judge? He says, $175. Goes to show you, huh?
Yeah.
Here we go, Paul. Hi, Joe. Get to Malcolm Mitchell so I save my voice here. Oh, I'll do Tom Fenton, number 3. Oh, no, you do.
Want me to do number 3?
Hi, Joe, straight up there now. Hi, Joe and Darren.
Hi, Joe and Darren. Really enjoyed your informative show on 2/8. I would like to answer Darren's question of where I reside. I have lived in the Wyoming section of Lynn for over 40 years and would have been directly impacted by the Parkland Ave site for the Pickering Middle School. I hope they seriously consider the Union Hospital site for the replacement of a new Pickering. I also would like to see a monorail loop between Lynn and Boston. Just thinking outside the box. Lastly, Darren, let's call a spade a spade. The imposition of a trash fee is nothing but another term for taxation. Keep up the great job, and I look forward to your next show. And I got to say, you know, trash fee, tax, it's all the same. And by the way, I remember back, you remember this, what was it, back in the early 80s or the late 70s, that in response to the out of control local spending, they came up with Proposition 2.5, which basically, I'm oversimplifying here, but limited the ability.
I was elected on that.
Right, it was the ability for the cities and towns to raise taxes more than 2.5% a year is basically the rule, right? And,
they got around it. They created the Water Sewer Commission.
And trash fees.
That's right. We don't have very much time. So, Tom Fenton, Mr. Sear, they have misunderstood my statement. I was talking about Johnson Street and the LPD parking lots. Why do taxpayers have to pay for parking while the people who ticket offenders get a free ride? Let's not forget the maintenance costs for all the free parking. I'm not quite sure about that. Can you make heads or tails of that one, Paul? And by the way, Timmy, thank you. You've always been a consistent and well thought.
Well, I can tell you that the off-street parking is becoming a real problem down in downtown Lynn. And it's the good thing, bad thing. The good news is that there's a lot of action downtown, a lot of jobs, and a lot of activity during the day and so forth. The bad news is there's no place for anybody to park. We have about 200 plus people in our building on Salisbury Street, and we generally use the Ellis Street parking lot. And when we get a snowstorm, there's no place for us to go.
You know, Tim comes up with something I never knew about, and that's not has had this tax for years. I think it's a trash tax, but it's optional. They can either have your trash picked up or not. And the numerous households deposit their trash in Lynn using public access trash receptacles, i.e. Market Street, Dunkin' Donuts, or gas stations. That's interesting, isn't it?
It is, but I think that we're well past that because we instituted the recycling thing, and we were able to substantially reduce the cost of our trash collection with
which is currently $6 million.
Right. So when Clancy was the mayor, and Jay Fink was the DPW director, I remember we actually cut a 5-year contract with Waste Management, and back then it was only $5 million. And I guess what happened is that at least at some point, once, maybe twice during Kennedy's administration, she had to renegotiate again. And that's when and I think she did. That's why they had, they got those things now that dump the trash this way.
I got it. I got that. But here's our problem.
We're out of time.
We are plumb out of time. Have a great week. We'll see you same place, same time.